predict who you think finishes first through fifth in sack totals on the Chiefs.
Well, I don't know about you, Jordan, but I think we both have the same answer for number one.
Yeah, it's got to be Chris Jones, right?
Oh, I was going to say Tershawn Wharton. What's wrong with you? No, it's got to be Chris Jones. Especially with how great he's looked at defensive end, and almost feels like a move that'll let him rack up more sacks just because he can kind of tee off more from the defensive end, and then they'll move him inside when it's a favorable down and distance so he can once again tee off. So I would be shocked if anybody else on the team has more sacks than Chris Jones. And it would be kind of exciting if somebody did, because that means they had a great season. So I think both Foote's number one. I think the more interesting answer will be number two.
Yeah, I'm with you. And I talked to Sam Hayes the other day about, I sold kind of low on Chris Jones. I was like, 12 and a half sacks sounds about right. I don't think he's going to be the defensive player of the year caliber guy that people are projecting him to be. And through two preseason games, he's looked like the guy that people have been hyping him up to be. So 15 sacks ish, maybe even a couple more. I could see him having a career season. Now, number two, like you said, is the interesting one. And I'm going to go with Frank Clark just because I think he's going to get back on the field soon enough. I think he's going to stay healthy long enough. And I think that there won't be legal intervention that will see him miss a huge chunk of the year. I know that's a lot of ifs, but assuming all of that is true, I think Frank Clark's going to have a good year. Like, this is it for him, I think, in Kansas City, unless he's literally like a Hall of Famer for one season. But I think that he is going to be motivated enough to get like 9.5, 10, maybe even 11 sacks or something like that. He's going to be in that 9 to 11 ballpark. And I think be a guy that will finish second on the team.
Yeah, number two is definitely Clark or somebody else, depending on how much faith you have in Frank Clark. And I'm going to be honest, he's already had a few injuries, been banged up a little bit. And so I think my faith is wavering in him. And there's a guy that they brought in that's really interesting for this number two spot. So I'm going to go with Jarran Reed as my number two. I think with a defensive line, even if Frank Clark's not playing the best, I think it's just a defensive line that requires a lot of players to have attention towards them. And I think that's where Reed really shines. That's where he's shown in Seattle, along with Frank Clark, when he's not the main guy, but which he was last year for the Seahawks. So that's kind of why the sack totals came down. But as a cleanup guy, a guy who can penetrate, he's really a solid member of the defensive line. I could see him ending up with like 8 sacks. And then if you're not high on Frank Clark this year, maybe another 6.5, 7 sack year. Reed would be number two. So I think Reed, I will go with number two. It's like a 55-45 between him and Clark, but for me, it would be Reed, then Clark. And then the fourth one's also kind of interesting for sure.
Yeah, I had Reed, probably Clark like 60-40. Like, I think Clark will get like 9.5 sacks. I have Reed number three at like 7, 7.5, or 8. Like, I think they're all going to have good years. I think Reed just, it says a lot more about Frank Clark for me, I think, than Jarran Reed. I know that he's going to have a good year, but I agree with everything you said. Like, he very well could supplant Frank Clark in that sack total. Clark, it's just iffy. Like, what you're going to get with Jarran Reed. If he's healthy, he's going to be productive. He's going to have good opportunities. He's not going to be the only guy. That logic definitely makes sense. So I'm interested to see who your number 4 guy is, because I think it's got to be one guy, but I'm interested to see if you have the same person I do.
I don't know if I fully believe this, which is, kind of the point of sometimes sports media. But I can definitely see a world where this happens. So I'm going to shock the world when I say this. I'm going to say it's L'Jarius Sneed. Because there's going to be a lot of guys with around, I think, 3 to 5 sacks on the team. Because after the top 3, you get to role players that'll be rotating in and out. However, in limited time in the slot last year, we saw L'Jarius Sneed rack up sack after sack. And with him playing full-time slot in nickel, you just know Steve Spagnuolo is going to look at what he did last year and try to expand on that role. So if Sneed brings over success from the slot next year, and there's a ton of slot blitzes. And if he keeps his instincts and gets home, I could see him finishing with like 5, 6 sacks. So that could be good enough for fourth on a team. So I'm going to say him. It was very close between him and another guy, which is who I assume you're alluding to.
Yeah, I was gonna go Tershawn Wharton, and
Yeah.
literally, I don't have them separated by a ton. I just think that it's literally Wharton is going to get a more consistent opportunity, which is ironic because we know Snead's going to get those opportunities. But Wharton looks improved. I know on obvious passing downs, he's going to get out there. He will rotate in. He's going to keep everybody fresh. So I've got 4 or 5. I still don't think that I could be able to flip flop them, but I wouldn't be hugely surprised. I thought about putting Mike Dana in as like 5.5. Like I'm gonna give honorable mention to Mike Dana, but definitely Tershawn Wharton and L'Jarius Sneed bringing up the rear of that top 5. I think.